Tag doing it.
Awesome. Welcome to the September 13th edition of the PFF Forecast. We are officially on to week 2. It's going to be a great episode. We've got, of course, our locks of the week. We're going to do a little injury roundup. We'll talk about the fact that week 1 was super low scoring. Offenses sucked, and whether or not that's going to happen again in week 2. I'll talk some SGPs and some live betting, and I have a phenomenal way to begin the podcast. So with that, let's rock. This is my first time trying to do that all on my own. I feel like I managed to get it done without breaking anything, but I wasn't sure. So to prepare for this, I did have a quick check-in with the Lord, and we want to begin the podcast with a really special video that I found just before recording this. A dominant performance by Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. I, for a long time, have talked about Jimmy G being the chosen one, the second coming, and the savior. Turns out I was wrong. I was a little early. Never wrong, just early. Going to play the clip, and you guys can enjoy it here.
How have you seen your faith grow from freshman year when you come in as an 18-year-old kid to going into senior year?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got to Iowa State, I had a relationship with the Lord and everything, and I feel like just being a quarterback and going through all the things that I have in a college town with a lot of temptation and things coming my way as, the quarterback and the face of a football program. And so I think I've matured in that area, leaning on the Lord. I'm not going to do this my way or what the world wants me to do, rather than, I'm going to go what the Lord calls me to do. And I'm going to do it out of love, and everything that he has to offer is what I'm going to do. And so I feel like that's how I've matured at my time at Iowa State through the Lord.
How crucial has that been, being able to share it with guys like Rory, other teammates on the team, and have that presence?
Yeah, I feel like our relationships are able to, grow stronger and stronger when we talk about the Lord. And, for me, it helps me connect to anybody from any kind of background. It doesn't matter where they're from. And so I feel like
What I would like to point out is that he is listening very closely to Kyle Shanahan. Incredible work, listening closely to Kyle Shanahan, doing what Kyle Shanahan tells him to do, operating it to perfection. So are you guys in on my guy Brock now after seeing that? I knew you were a little skeptical, Brad, but I don't know. I feel like you got to be in now.
Yeah, he was throwing up prayers all week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A couple beautiful prayers to Brandon Ayuk, obviously, and then did have 3 turnover-worthy plays. But, hey, the Lord was on his side. None of those were interceptions. So how can you not be buying Brock?
Judah, you don't care? You're speechless?
I'm speechless. I mean, that has left me completely speechless. How could it not, quite frankly? There's so much. I'm just glad he's overcome his temptations, throwing to defenders. He's seemingly got it on track now. And I will say, I've never left the Brock Purdy train. And I was
3 turnover-worthy plays week 1, I think. And the Lord protected him from every single one.
It's the journey. Exactly. That's the point. Yep. He also, last year, high turnover-worthy play rate, low interceptions. Mm-hmm. He's got something on his side.
Yeah, I think so. This is a football podcast. We will talk about football and betting as well. For those of you that are new, who are listening for the first time, joining us for this season, welcome. For longtime members of the printing press, we appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out with us. We are going to be going live every single episode this year. So we go live on Sunday night, right after Sunday Night Football, or in the case of last Sunday, during the fourth quarter, because the game was already over. And there we talk about the upcoming week. We guess the lines. It's a lot of fun. But on Wednesdays now, we'll be going live as well because we like StreamYard. It's easier to use and gives you an opportunity to come hang out, interact with us as things are going. So please feel free to drop some stuff in the comments. We will read them and talk about it. Let's start here, fellas, because week 1 was pretty darn awful in terms of offense. And I actually have a great chart here to show you guys with this. And it's something we're going to be doing as we go through this, which is to look at some visuals here. So you can see this is how NFL offenses convert a new series to a new series. A new set of downs is from Timo Riske and PFF_Moo if you do not already follow him. And so this is showing you the percentage of the time that each team is converting to the new set of downs on a given down. So basically what this says is that Miami Dolphins are converting to a new set of downs 37% of the time on first down, which is insane. It obviously led the league. Second down, third down, fourth down, and the times that they do not convert to a new series of downs. And what I think is interesting about this is that the NFL average, there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams that were actually above average in terms of converting to a new set of downs. And you can see very few teams that were above average on first down, very few teams that are above average on second down, big chunk of teams that managed to get there on third down, which we know is a little bit more fluky. So my question to you guys, start with you, Judah, is, are you buying this as something that is systemic to this season, or is this a bunch of noise and we should revert to the mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bunch of. I think this level and like the fact that we have so many of these teams like the Bengals and the Bills, even the Jaguars. I don't think those teams are going to stay this low, but I do actually think this is a trend. What I would point to, number one, is that like we have a lot of rookie quarterbacks who I don't think would be starting in past seasons. Like how many times have we said like Jameis Winston would be better than like 10 to 15 starters on a team? That's because like they're not giving Jameis Winston a turn. It's like we're going to stick with the Anthony Richardsons, the Bryce Youngs, the CJ Strouds. I'd also say like we've effectively have like, with the exception of our guy Purdy and actually Trevor Lawrence, we haven't really had a great quarterback come out of the last 3 drafts, or at least one who's like really going to produce. And like how many times have we talked about the biggest cheat code for a team is like having a good quarterback on a rookie deal? And like the last 3 draft classes haven't really produced that, right? We just saw Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, these guys get destroyed. Obviously Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, disasters. And the 2023 rookies, while maybe promising down the line, certainly are not there in years in year one. And like this is exactly the spot where you'd see an Andy Dalton starting for the Panthers, Gardner Minshew starting for the Colts. And I think that raises the expectation, at least if we were to play this out in past seasons. I'd be skeptical of these guys like having good offenses.
I think it's a great point, and I actually think it is systemic for 2 other points. That's probably the main one. Obviously, quarterback play is going to dictate something like this to the largest degree, but I also think, and look, Josh Allen showed it better than anybody else, but in today's NFL now, defenses are going to sit back. They're not going to let you hit the explosive passes, and there are some quarterbacks like a Josh Allen going up against Zach Wilson who are still, I guess, just incapable of checking the ball down and not trying to hit a home run on every single drop back, even though it's literally all he needed to do to win a football game. I mean, we talked about, Patrick Mahomes last year, super low average depth of target. Wasn't it like 40 of his touchdowns were thrown like 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage or less? Like a bunch of crazy stats there. So that's one. And then I'll plug here. I actually talked with an NFL interior offensive lineman about a second thing I think is mattering a ton here is the interior defender position is continuing to get better and better and better at rushing the passer. We're getting Jalen Carter coming in, having 8 pressures in his first NFL game. Obviously, it's an outlier scenario, and the interior offensive linemen, I think, are not able right now to keep up with the growth of that unit. The Aaron Donalds and all those guys have changed the NFL fundamentally, and I think we need the counter punch from guards and centers. We haven't gotten there yet.
That's really interesting. So the idea would be that the guard who has been long forgotten as an important part of the NFL offense, and we did this way back when we were developing PFF WAR, like the least valuable positions on the field, what are they, right? We really talked about running backs a bunch, but guards, generally don't show up. That outside pressure has long been understood mathematically to be more valuable than generating pressure from the interior, even though I think that's counterintuitive to some people. But generally, it is true. That's really interesting. So are you guys approaching this week then, given that you think it's systemic, in a different way? Like, are we looking at some of these bigger spreads and going, well, if scoring isn't going to be up, is it a team by team thing? Is it a total set? Like, how are you guys approaching it, given that you think it is systemic?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a team by team thing. And even if just looking at the totals, we're seeing tons of totals starting with threes. That it's almost like the market has definitely adjusted to the like full extent. I'm not exactly sure. But again, I wouldn't necessarily think that like week one was really, really, really low. It was the lowest week one in terms of EPA in the last 24 years, success rate, basically any efficiency metric you'll look at. It was really bad. I think it's a team by team sort of thing. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with the quarterbacks, and especially like one point I didn't make, which I think is actually worthwhile, is like we also have two of the biggest quarterback contracts in Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson on like bad offenses right now. And like I'm starting to think Lamar Jackson's headed towards the same path. Maybe that's a discussion for another time, a little bit of a hot take. But I think that's like kind of exactly the point, which is like you got to take it on a game by game basis. And if anything, it's also an angle for live betting of like, are we pricing in, let's say, comebacks at the same rate as we have in the past? Kind of not necessarily adjusting to the quarterback plays, stuff like picking those spots in particular situations, especially like obvious passing downs, like anticipating and trying to time the market, basically saying like, if the market is taking a macro view and saying like, we expect the base rate of success for quarterbacks to be X, and really it's Y because quarterbacks aren't that good, that's something to take advantage of.
Yep, I have the same answer. Again, kind of maybe for different reasons. I think to a degree you don't want to overreact. We always, every year, and again, this is an outlier, but talk about, the defenses are ahead of the offense early. I think more and more in the preseason, we see fewer and fewer teams actually play their offensive players. So for some reasons, maybe we'll have a bounce back. The weather was pretty bad in week 1, too, although it actually wasn't as bad as I think it was made out to be in some spots. But definitely pick your spots, though, for sure. I think, if you know there's a team maybe that is going to play a bunch of man coverage, maybe you can pick a spot there based on the opponent. If you know a team's going to sit back in soft zone, but the offense is going to be able to efficiently attack that, cough, Green Bay against Chicago, a couple others, then there are ways to kind of weaponize maybe the lower totals. But I mean, hey, George, the one under we gave out on Sunday, part of our write-up was 42.5 on Sunday night. It's down a full field goal. That is Cleveland at Pittsburgh is now 39.5. So we kind of already have taken advantage of one of those spots this week.
Yeah. And to your point, Judah, so a bunch of totals that have moved down even more. So Jets-Cowboys is interesting, right? Cowboys have moved out to 9. The totals moved down nearly 4 points. You got Broncos-Commanders with 3, Giants-Cardinals with a 3 as well. Colts-Texans now in the 30s, Saints-Panthers in the 30s, Browns-Steelers, as you mentioned. This game is basically there. Bears-Bucks, like the quarterback play is really the thing here. And Brad, your point about interior defensive linemen, I hadn't really thought of, but just looking at quarterback play, I mean, it's poor. You think about the second-year quarterbacks, the third-year quarterbacks. How many of them are playing well? Justin Fields, I hate to kind of bury the guy. On plays where he had 2+ open receivers, had an average depth of target of 3.9 and a 50 PFF grade. So, aside from Tua and Lawrence, you really don't have any young guys that are lighting the world on fire. You've got a lot of old guys who have retired. You have Aaron Rodgers, who obviously is being replaced by now probably the worst quarterback, in the NFL. All of those things matter. But the thing that I'm curious about is some of these quarterbacks I expect to regress positively, right? So I expect Joe Burrow to regress positively. I expect Josh Allen, who's 0 for 4 with 2 or 3 interceptions, throwing 20+ yards downfield. I expect him to regress positively. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense should have been better. I expect drops to not be super stable and that to regress positively. So I do think there is some regression. I think Jalen Hurts, right? We talked about him and the Eagles not performing super well against the Patriots. I expect them to regress positively against the Vikings. So I do think it evens out a little bit. My take is it's more a spot by spot basis. When you have these really poor quarterbacks, don't expect them to play well. And I think to your point, Brad, we should be looking at the interior and identifying some of those mismatches and betting with, or against, with them, I should say, and against teams that have really big issues in that spot. I think that's a hard place probably for the market to handicap. I mean, PFF grades are something that you can buy, but I'm not sure that everyone is totally taking that into consideration with their models or when they're pricing a line.
Yeah, I mean, just one example, tomorrow night's game still has a total of 49, and obviously these are good offenses, but because of interior pressure last year, Kirk Cousins, he had 3 interceptions in that game, or maybe only threw 2, but could have thrown 5. I think Darius Slay was his number 1 targeted player when the Eagles played the Vikings last year. So, I think that total, I'm not saying I'm going to bet it or anything, but pretty high number for a quick turnaround Thursday night game with a massive mismatch between the Eagles interior and the Vikings interior offensive line.
Yeah, we'll talk about that game here in a second. Before we do, let's get to a little injury roundup here. So there are a lot of injuries in that game coming up in Philadelphia. Maybe that's a good place to start, Brad. But let's kind of canvas here the big injuries, maybe the ones that we don't totally know about. For example, I saw Devontae Adams did not practice today. But let's start with the Eagles Vikings, because there are a bunch of injuries there, and kind of go through.
So ties right into the point I was just making. On the Minnesota side, the biggest absence is going to be center Garrett Bradbury, not going to play in this game, which is another reason why, I bring that up. Not that he's a good pass protector himself, but a solid starter, a decent player. I think it only gets worse without him. Ed Ingram, their right guard, is struggling on the struggle bus as a pass protector. So that's really all it is for Minnesota. Eagles have a longer list. James Bradbury, the number 2 corner on the outside. Nakobe Dean, the off-ball linebacker, are the bigger names for them there. Those guys are going to be out, which maybe does help, this Minnesota offense a little bit. But as we know, Philadelphia doesn't really spend a whole lot over the middle. They care about, the corner, yes, but they care about the defensive line. So that's the biggest news for Thursday. We can save the other names for later. It's a long list of other injuries across the NFL.
Yeah, it's bad. Do you know anything about the Adams thing? That surprised me. I didn't know that he was hurt.
Just saw today, didn't practice. What was it, toe, I want to say it was. I do not know why, but he's a veteran. I could see him getting veteran days. Yeah, Judah feels the same.
I was going to say, I think it's got to be a veteran day. His prop is also still up. So that would seem to, not that they can't get that wrong, but that would seem to indicate he's going to play. I just assume, like, veteran of his caliber, like Wednesday not practicing, not really a big deal. Like if he's not practicing tomorrow, like that's definitely a red flag.
That makes sense. What about Christian Watson? Is he going to be back?
So I don't think so. So I mentioned, I think, was it Sunday, how, I was listening to some doctor on the radio talk about if he doesn't practice Tuesday, Wednesday, he's probably not playing. He has not practiced on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's a hamstring. They're playing Atlanta. It's probably smart to not play him in that game.
And then the Patriots also got pretty banged up. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it? Devontae Parker didn't play, but I don't know if he's going to play again. Their entire offensive line is dealing with an injury of some capacity. Who knows who plays and who doesn't? But every single starter was on the injury report today.
Yeah, that's not great. Now the Dolphins, can they take advantage of that? I think that's going to be very interesting. Mac Jones, not exactly the best scrambler in the world, so I'm not sure how stable I think his performance is going to be under pressure. By the way, I'm citing a great piece that Judah wrote. You can find it on pff.com, evaluating true scrambling and how stable it is and how it kind of helps you understand the quarterback landscape and traits that quarterbacks have that actually carry through into their performance. The last question I had for you, Brad, around injuries is our Seahawks. People will remember that on Sunday we decided we were going to back the Seahawks against the Detroit Lions. It appears the Seahawks have some issues.
They certainly do. Both starting tackles. I'd be surprised if either guy goes in this game. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. They said today that both guys are hurt, and it'd be a shock if they play. I think also a signal there is they signed 41-year-old vet, the legend Jason Peters, who, look, obviously he's coming in after getting signed this week, but last year in August, he was on a fishing boat, hopped off, got a phone call, stepped in, and had like a 71 grade. Like the guy is timeless. But yeah, obviously he has to get up to speed pretty quickly. Not a great situation in Seattle with those tackles.
It's not ideal. Okay, we're gonna do some same game parlays. Before we do, this is my annual reminder, or not annual, weekly reminder. I guess it's gonna be every single podcast, so bi-weekly reminder about AG1. And keeping yourself in good shape on the inside and the outside. Athletic Greens, now called AG1, is a great way to get all of the supplements that you need to stay healthy and happy and regular and all the things that you need to make sure you don't have to worry about your nutrition on a daily basis, and to do so pretty cheaply. It's like less than $3 a day. And it's super convenient whether you're traveling like me, a decent amount. You can take those travel packs with you, not worry about what you're going to eat on the road, and get yourself some nutrients while you're at it. It also, like most of these things, generally don't taste very good. It doesn't taste like, it's not reprehensible. You can definitely get through it and drink it, especially if you have the grit of the of a Dan Campbell like we do here. So highly recommend it. You can go find it at drinkag1.com/PFF and get yourself a 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/PFF and notice that I wasn't going to lie to you. So I didn't tell you that it tasted amazing. Like, it doesn't taste amazing in my opinion, but it's definitely worth it. The benefits far outweigh the fact that you have to like suck up not drinking like the most amazing tasting sugar-filled garbage. And quite frankly, you should be skeptical of anything that does taste really, really good that also claims to be super healthy. Like, how many things do you know, guys, that are super healthy for you and taste like amazing? Those don't exist. So drinkag1.com/PFF. Get yourself healthy and happy. Speaking of healthy and happy, SGPs. We were very close, Judah, this past weekend. For anyone that has followed along over time, if you've read Judah's work, you know that it has been very, very profitable. Last year, 81% ROI, and that doesn't even include the absurd like 250 to 1 SGP that you did hit. The one that you almost hit was off by like a single rush yard. So you are the master. If you do not kind of understand Judah's process, go listen to our last podcast. We talked about it a little bit, and you'll catch on pretty quickly. But let's talk SGPs for week 2. You're in the lab cooking some up. This is the place to hear about them before you publish them on pff.com. So give it to us. What are you thinking SGP wise this week?
I'll first add, like, the exact SGP that I gave out last week, a couple of them were very, very close to hitting, but did not. But this is exactly to actually give the angle itself and let kind of the better decide just how comfortable they're willing to, expose themselves. Like, if you took Derek Carr 300 yards instead of 325, and like that's the same angle, that's something that would cash. Brandon Ayuk, we hit on that part. We hit on the Niners part, not necessarily on the full passing yards, but all of which is to say, like, it's the angle that's kind of creating a lot of the value. And I think it's not just the actual parlay themselves. Though I hope those hit, and I hope those are as profitable as last year. So a couple of spots I'm eyeing, and of course this comes with the caveat that we don't have full prices yet. I tend to build my SGPs on FanDuel and now PointsBet, just because they are the most valuable I have found, and those are not available. But some spots I'm looking to attack. I'm going to start with Washington against the Broncos, more specifically Sam Howell to Jahan Dotson. What I learned from Sam Howell is that he is going to be an absolute variance machine, right? We're going to have games of like 7 sacks, just like chucking the ball downfield, a bunch of yards. His ADOT was not very high. I think that was a product of playing against the Cardinals and doing exactly the opposite of what Josh Allen did against the Jets, which is just like, okay, if we just check this ball down, basically let our defense do its thing, we'll pull out this win. But the angle here is that I think Sam Howell is going to have one of the higher ADOTs. The Pat Surtain should be matched up with Terry McLaurin. I expect that to kind of filter targets to Dotson, who already has a very high target share. If you look at this defense and look at, especially on the defensive line, it's not exactly so imposing. And I think Sam Howell is going to run himself into some sacks, which will kill drives. But I don't think this is a particularly good pass rush. And I just expect him we're going to get extremely low prices, probably still baking in the Broncos defense of past years, which was really good. I don't see that continuing. We talked about that last week with Vegas and why I was on Vegas. And I think this matchup sets up very, very well, especially considering the price, where Sam Howell is going to be looking to Jahan Dotson a lot, especially if the Denver offense is not particularly good. This can mean a bunch of plays. And I see this as when a guy's priced at, 200 yards and he has a tendency to throw the ball 25 yards downfield. If you hit on a couple of those deep shots, you can really fly over those totals. And especially, I think that Dotson's going to be the number one target with Surtain locking down Terry McLaurin. And we just saw that was the worst coverage corner we had graded last week that Dotson will be running his routes against.
To your point, the Broncos played the Las Vegas Raiders last week. Jimmy G, he's a miracle worker, but he's not exactly fleet of foot. These are the percentage of times that teams did either made a target, scramble, throwaway, sack, or batted pass against pressure. You'll notice that the Raiders got a throw off every single time against pressure. He was only pressured on 4 dropbacks as well. So the Denver Broncos defense, to your point, not exactly super intimidating. Jimmy G was able to carve them up and do so while Surtain, to your point, basically shadowed Devontae Adams and was able to attack to the second receiver, which was Jacoby Myers. And until he got that just horrible hit on him, he was dicing him up. I think you could argue Jahan Dotson, definitely a better deep threat, and Howell more likely to take some chances against that defense than Jimmy G is. So I personally really, really, really like that. And I'm a big fan of the Howell to Dotson combo.
Yeah. So
next one, you got
next
any
up,
others?
I'm gonna go with 2, a little bit maybe chalky, but it's interesting. Sometimes I like a particular angle, like on a player, like we're just talking about right now, and sometimes it's like I like the bet, and then I just kind of play it out, and I'm like, why do I like this bet? And that's going to be the Cincinnati passing attack and the Miami passing attack. Cincinnati, I think it's a two-sided play here. The market's downgrading the Bengals offense after last year. I would say like this was firmly in the range of outcomes. We've seen Burrow do this, like especially in week 1, not having played in the preseason, not having practice in the offseason, like there's going to be some rust. I'm willing to accept that. He's just going to, I have a much bigger sample of Joe Burrow being really, really good than I do of like this one game clunker. It's not as if this is like a trend that's been developing over the past bunch of years. I also really, really want to fade this Ravens defense. I mean, we've talked about the defensive line. Odafe Oweh had a great game last Sunday, but like he hasn't been anything over the last couple of years. And even still, like this pass rush is dreadful. And especially with Joe Burrow, who, his Achilles heel is taking too many sacks and on those structured plays, whether it's his fault or the offensive line's fault. I don't think that's particularly an issue against the Ravens. And if you just look at the secondary, it's dreadful. It's really, really dreadful. And like when you have guys like Chase and Higgins, also the Bengals are kind of fighting for divisional hopes, which is kind of crazy to say in week 2. But if you go down 0-2 in this AFC North, that's kind of a death wish for your chances of winning the division. They're gonna have a ton of urgency, which is kind of irrelevant to the main pieces here, which is that like I want to be betting on Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins when the market is discounting them, especially in a matchup where the Ravens I do not think are priced to the caliber of their actual talent. I think it's a lot of reputation. This is a bet I like, and I really, really like just like absolutely exploding in the passing game. A Burrow 350-yard type of day with Chase and Higgins both kind of eclipsing some high yardage totals and going well above their totals. I really, really like the Bengals to just kind of, or the angle of the Bengals completely blowing the doors off the Ravens.
The interesting thing about this is, so last year, actually, the Ravens did a very good job against Burrow in both matchups. But that is a different Ravens team, right? Different defensive coordinator. Not having Marlon Humphrey, not having Marcus Peters. So there's like a big difference there. And look at that defensive line. I mean, they're not anything to be scared of. What happened against the Browns that made it so hard for Joe Burrow? Myles Garrett was doing crossovers in front of the offensive line and then soundly beating them. So like that there's no Myles Garrett on the screen right now. And I think T. Higgins was still, I mean, he peppered him with targets. He just didn't catch any. So I think it is a good spot. You'll probably hear a bunch of people reference those games last year as some sort of trend. In reality, it's just a bunch of baloney.
Yeah. I realized I teased one of them. It didn't actually give the play with Miami and New England. I'm certainly hearing a lot. I wonder just how much this is baked in of like, oh, Bill Belichick this, Bill Belichick that. And I think it's a crazy overreaction to last week, which is like the Patriots pass rush is really good. That's the strength of their defense, right? That matters a lot more. And this gets to the point of the quarterback scrambling article almost, that like they beat the Eagles offensive line, which I did not anticipate happening, but that is more meaningful when you have a guy like Jalen Hurts who takes 3.5 seconds to throw the ball, right? The pass rush matters more. Tua Tagovailoa is throwing 13 yards deep. His ADOT was 12.8 last week. in 2.5 seconds. That mitigates the effects of a pass rush. If you can't even generate a quick pressure because the ball's already out, I don't really care how good your pass rush is. And that, like, Teron Armstead's down doesn't really matter because Tua's getting rid of the ball so quick and getting it so far downfield. Add in the fact that we have a classic case of I don't know if Bill Belichick's going to play man. I think that would be a disastrous idea if he does, but this is the highest man team, certainly in week 1. And they've been a high man team for a bunch of years now. Christian Gonzalez was, in mine and Arjun's metric, the worst cornerback, believe it or not, in week 1. And like, if you've got 5 to 7 snaps against Tyreek Hill in man coverage, it's a death wish. It's an absolute death wish. I don't think the Patriots defense is as good as, the tape they put on. I thought that was matchup dependent. I really, really like the Dolphins to just keep going. At some point, we're going to have to accept that Tua Tagovailoa with Mike McDaniel, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle, this is an elite offense. Like, how many games are they going to have to put together before we're like, oh, they're really, really elite? I mean, it's so long as there's some question, I'm going to be buying.
Yeah, is Waddle healthy?
Not fully. Questionable with an oblique. He's going to play. I think it's the same core muscle he's been dealing with. But yeah, I think he was limited in practice today. Not fully healthy, but I think he's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. No Mostert, apparently. This is the biggest shock of the entire world that Raheem Mostert is hurt, which means it's our guy Devin A-Chain season.
It's always A-Chain season. It just hasn't started yet. Never wrong, just early, just like you said.
By the way, to the Ravens' point, I watched that game super, super closely. I never felt good about the Ravens, offense or defense. And like, they actually didn't do terribly from a perfectly covered play perspective, but like CJ Stroud and that offense, they were able to find some pockets in there. They couldn't really finish, but again, I think if you're giving up anything to CJ Stroud and the Texans, it's probably not. Not.
I'll just add there, like, the research on the perfectly covered stuff. The most influential part of perfect coverage is actually the offense that you're facing and not the defense.
Yep.
Right? Like, you're going to have a really good perfectly covered rate if your offense is you're playing are just bad. I think that's the perfect example.
And to the pass rush point real quickly, because a couple guys did okay. The left guard they traded for 2 weeks before the game. The center was a rookie 6th rounder, and the right tackle they signed 2 weeks before the game. And the Ravens still didn't dominate up front.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The one thing that's interesting is, so the Bengals had forced a non-perfectly covered play at the lowest rate. What am I looking at here? The offense faced a perfectly covered play. This is what I'm trying to say. At the highest rate. In other words, they were unable to get people open most frequently of any team. And it's interesting because certainly T. Higgins is more of a contested catch guy, but Jamar Chase can create separation. Tyler Boyd can create separation. It's really going to be interesting. And I think we talked about this as well. Like, the Browns are a very underrated, defensively talented team, certainly. And I think it'll be very interesting this week as we talk about the Steelers, who were unable to do much of anything against the 49ers, and what they could potentially do against the Browns. So I think I have a lot of similarities, honestly, to the 49ers, especially up front. Okay, we're going to do some live game betting angles here in just a second. But before we do, DraftKings football is certainly back, even if the offense is not yet. And DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets when you sign up with the promo code PFF. So download the app now, use code PFF when you sign up, and you'll get that $200 instantly in bonus bets. We're going to talk about some of our favorites. We've already talked about some same game parlays that we like. We'll obviously get through most of the games as well and identify our favorite bets both for tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday. So go download the app, use promo code PFF, and get those $200 instantly in bonus bets when you use that promo code. Here we go. It is time for the longest disclaimer in all of ad read history. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. boothill.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football for terms and eligibility. Responsible gambling resources as well. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. I kept trying to work in a Zach Wilson joke. It turned out that every one could have been a Zach Wilson joke. I managed not to do that. I'll rebound and bring that on Sunday, and we'll get some Zach Wilson in there. But yeah, go to DraftKings. All right, live game betting. We talked about this last week, some of the angles that we liked. Judo, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go to Brad. Some live game angles that we're liking going into week 2.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting part of the season where we're like kind of balancing like our off-season priors and also like what we've actually seen on the field. And obviously it's a small sample and you don't want to read too much into it. So I don't want to be betting necessarily on the Raiders and the Bills before the game starts. But if I start to see a little more of the same of like, okay, the Bills really aren't as good as I thought they were, and the Raiders offense maybe isn't, as bad, and they're actually kind of good to mediocre. That's something, if the book is still hanging this 9.5, it's assuming that the Bills are really, really good and the Raiders are really, really bad. And if you got to get a game script and it's just kind of like calibrating to that initial line that they put out, like I'm going to want to be backing the Raiders. I think the same thing with the Niners and Rams, which is like the Rams are probably the most surprising team to me. I thought I did not see that game happening. I did not see the Rams as capable of putting up, high 20 points, especially in a week where everyone else really struggled. If they're doing that again, and the book and the books are still pricing in, 8 points, 8.5 points, I'm going to want to bet the Rams live because they're obviously better than that. Conversely, like I'm happy to sell if I see that, like, okay, the Rams that was just a one game fluke sort of thing, and actually just kind of buying and seeing what is actually happening and paying maybe a little bit for more information, I think is especially worthwhile in week 2. Those are a couple spots I'm looking at. I'm sure there are more, for those looking to kind of balance their offseason priors with what they're seeing. But this is the perfect time to kind of test that and buy a little bit of information, and maybe you'll lose a couple points of value, but it's worth it for actually understanding and getting more information.
So, Judah, I wanted to ask you a question about one of those games you just touched on, or one of the teams in the Buffalo Bills. So I think at this point we've realized that, ignoring how good they are, whatever, Josh Allen's aggressiveness is basically situation agnostic. Like he's incapable of, hey, you're playing against Zach Wilson, you have a touchdown lead, just move the ball down the field and kick field goals, and you'll probably win games. So with that said, like if they have, let's say, a small lead, do you view that as, okay, well, it might extend to a larger lead because Allen's still going to be super aggressive, or maybe you can get some value on betting the other side because he's just going to continue to take shots, maybe turn the ball over? I don't know. How do you potentially play, his consistent aggression?
Yeah, it works both ways where it's exactly as you outlined. Like the aggression could be great. It could also be the worst thing that possibly happens if you're taking the other side. I think like I bet the Bills, alts in like the fourth quarter, basically saying like, all right, they got remember it was the third quarter, like they have a touchdown lead, but like this can easily expand to 2-3 scores. And really how I like to do it is player props, which is like especially when like Gabe Davis is going to be the guy who's going to be taking those deep shots too, or even like the tight ends. I think if you're looking like mid game for props, they were basically just assuming like Josh Allen's not going to throw the ball very much. I think that's the way to attack it, which is like you basically get the upside of, oh, I see actually like this is Allen's tendency. He's just going to chuck it deep. And like I know who it's going to. I'll take Gabe Davis overs instead of kind of introducing that other variance of just like, all right, I don't know if he's turning it over or throwing a touchdown. It could go either way. But I think props is really the angle to, especially for Josh Allen to.
Very quick follow-up real quick on the same thing. So the Bills were dead last in 12 personnel rate in the NFL last year, like by a distant margin. I think they were first or second in the NFL this week 1. Obviously, you use a first-round pick on Dalton Kincaid. Maybe the market hasn't responded there yet. You can get some value on him or Dawson Knox, or maybe there's actually value tied into James Cook because maybe they'll start running out of some of those 12 personnel looks. So I don't know, just something to keep an eye on that stuck out in a massive swing in their usage of that personnel.
It's an interesting point. Even I'd have to say on the effectiveness of the offense. Like it's a very different style. That's also something to monitor.
I wonder if they will manage to get him to be a little bit more conservative, Josh Allen, that is. But they definitely didn't look like they knew what they were doing quite yet with that offense. I think they played 2 tight ends a pretty significant amount. And the Jets matched that with nickel, basically saying, hey, we think you're playing, Dalton Kincaid as a wide receiver. They basically were. And, that they weren't really able to run out of that in the way that you would expect, right? Like if you do that to San Francisco, for example, right? If you match their heavy personnel with nickel, you're going to get your teeth beaten in. So I think it is interesting. The other one that I think is an interesting game to look at is this Seahawks and Lions game. It is one of the higher total games. I think you might see the Seahawks get off to a slow start once again. But this is, to your point about kind of playing for their lives here, going down 0-2 with the Rams going 1-0. The Niners are a dominant team, it looks like. I don't think that Pete Carroll is going to have a team that just gives up. That's just not my read on it. So I think that's an interesting one where you could trade some variance. But if the Seahawks come out and are guns blazing, I would also expect the Lions to be able to figure it out and come back, just looking at what the Seahawks are dealing with from an offensive line perspective, and the fact that I think we believe pretty strongly in that offense. So that's one game that kind of caught my eye. The Jacksonville and Kansas City game is an obvious one. I think it's got the highest total out there. We've talked about betting Kansas City, live countless times. But I'm kind of hoping that Kansas City comes out and they drop a couple of passes early on, and people crap themselves, and that presents some opportunities for Kansas City as well.
Yeah, so. Didn't work last week, but that's almost a guarantee that if we get it again, it's gonna hit.
Yeah, it's that exactly. I think is the reason. People, you trust the process in that situation. I don't think Kadarius Toney is going to drop 3 straight passes because they won't give him a chance to. Like, he drops one this time. If he drops one, you got to put him in the blue tent. You got to go, yeah, we think he might have a concussion. We got to get him out of here and get him checked out. All right, you guys ready to get to some locks?
Let's do it.
All right, locks of the week. So last week, we came close to having a very good week. There were a couple that didn't quite go our way. We did hit our biggest one, which was the Josh Dobbs under 210 passing yards, 210.5 passing yards. It turned out it wasn't even close. That was no sweat one. The other ones, I'm pulling them up right now. Let's see. We had Seahawks and Rams. That obviously did not hit. Seahawks -5.5. That was probably our biggest miss of the group here. We did give out Raiders -2.5 at +200. Now the Raiders obviously covered, so hopefully you played a cover as well if you were following along. Teaser did not come through. We had the Jets, who obviously did cover their teaser. I think we discussed the Browns, ended up siding with the Steelers. And then Vikings Bucks over 45.5 did not come through. Although I think if you watch that game, there's some reason why the scoring was a little muted. But we're going to continue to trust the process. We have been plus EV on locks. We were all of last year. So we need to turn it around a little bit this week. Maybe we won't choose 6. Who knows? But why don't we get started with you, Judah, and your first lock submission?
Yeah, I gotta go with the Dolphins here. I'm gonna play an alt line again. I really love it. -5.5. I got it at +150. I just we can't be discounting the Dolphins for what their offense is right now. You can talk about Bill Belichick all you want. I think the Dolphins have actually won all of 2 starts against the Patriots. You can fact check me on that, but this is just it's a complete mismatch if they're playing man, as the Patriots like to do. And I want to fade the fact that the Patriots defense got any better. And we saw the offense isn't particularly good. I want to buy into Fangio defenses later in the season. Granted, I don't know if that's going to come in week 2 or week 6, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were in week 1. I think that was more a product of the Chargers. I'm looking to fade basically all of those angles. The Dolphins defense isn't that bad. The Patriots defense isn't that good. But I will say that the sample we have of last year and this year of the Dolphins offense being awesome is stable. And as long as Tua Tagovailoa is quarterback, I think this spread is just off.
And that one currently is at What are we at right now? At 3. Dolphins favored by 3.
Yeah. No, normal spread's 3. He want Judah said the alt minus 5.5 though, right?
Yeah, minus 5.5 plus 150. We'll include ROI and not just record in our case this year.
Yeah, we do need to include the units there for sure. So another one that we already talked about on Sunday, but I still love it, even with some injuries. We're talking about the Green Bay Packers. I mentioned Christian Watson. Also not sure if Aaron Jones plays in this game either. Came up with a hamstring on a touchdown, and I kind of tend to believe he's not going to play. I don't care. So I like Green Bay -1 here at Atlanta for a couple reasons here. I think this is going to be probably the fewest snaps played by both offenses in the NFL this week. I mentioned it last week with Baltimore versus Houston, an easy under for us that really was never in threat. And Green Bay and Atlanta were near the bottom of the entire NFL in plays, snaps per second or whatever, seconds between snaps per game. I'm probably saying that wrong. Nevertheless, they're a slow pace of play teams. I think Jair Alexander is going to lock down the only wide receiver on the Atlanta Falcons roster who had 1 target last week in Drake London. I don't love Quay Walker being out. I think he's a big factor here. But the last big thing for me is I think Devontae Wyatt, the first-round pick for Green Bay, has arrived. He was awesome against Chicago. Yes, a bad offensive line, but him and Kenny Clark on the interior, Rashawn Gary back, Lucas Van Ness looked good, Kingsley Enagbare, they have dudes, and I think they are going to control the line of scrimmage in this game again. I know Arj and I had a back and forth on Sunday about the Falcons getting pressure. I went back and looked when it was a game within 1 score in the first 3 quarters. They had no pressure. They got all those pressures on Bryce Young when the Panthers were down 2 touchdowns trying to throw the football to Adam Thielen and Judah Fortgang, late in the game. So I love Green Bay Packers -1 here.
Could be a shifty slot receiver. I like it.
I believe it.
I'm a big fan of that one. So first off, the Carolina Panthers looked atrocious, really, really bad. And Desmond Ridder, with the exception of basically Bryce Young and Justin Fields, was as bad of a quarterback performance as we saw. Low 50s grade. It was not good. We continue to see Arthur Smith not use their weapons to the best of their abilities. And then you looked at what, to your point, let's say they do try and get Drake London involved. Jair Alexander put the clamps down, the absolute clamps down in their game on Sunday against DJ Moore and the Chicago Bears. Didn't have to do much against Chase Claypool, Brad, because he gave about as much effort as you did with your watching the game while eating dip. So actually, I might argue you made more of an effort. You had to overcome.
I was gonna say I think I may have put more effort into my crab dip than Chase Claypool did in blocking on Sunday. But anyway.
Yeah, I think you might have had to. Okay, mine is an oldie. So we need to get back on the shine here. We had good success with our player prop that we put in the locks last week. We made it a 1.5 unit bet there, and so I'm feeling good about this player prop here. It's going back to one of our locks from the playoffs. It was an absolutely stone cold, easy, no doubt about it. And this is a Hawk lock. This is TJ Hockenson and our Minnesota Vikings. So a couple of things here. The Minnesota Vikings opened 7.5 underdogs. It's now 6.5. Don't like that line anymore. Can see why it's gotten down to 6.5. A lot of injuries for the Eagles. Those injuries are in the secondary. They're going to have to allocate more resources to the secondary to stop Justin Jefferson. But the Eagles also have a very strong pass rush, as we've talked about, with Jalen Carter up front. I want to share this great screenshot that our friend Arjun, who's on the Sunday podcast, shared with us. And that is this over here. So I'm going to bring this up. But what you can see here, these are the linebackers for the Eagles. And this is their cumulative coverage over expected over the past 4 years. And you can see that it is not very good. It is not something that you should be extremely excited about. Meanwhile, you've got Jalen Carter causing havoc up front. What are you going to have to do? You're going to have to throw the ball to TJ Hockenson. So I like his over. I think it's at 49.5. I also like betting some alts there. I'm curious from your guys' perspective, and I'm going to look and see what there's up there right now. But you can get, so you can get over 50 at minus 114. You can get over 60 at plus 140, over 70 at plus 205, over 80 at plus 310. I don't know how much you guys want to go here, but I feel really good about this one. TJ Hawkinson has been an incredibly solid tight end, if not top 5 tight end. And he's gotten a ton of targets from Kirk Cousins. He ranks 4th this year. I think he was 4th last year. I can pull it up here. Let's see. He was 10th last year.
Yeah, no, I love it because also another injury I forgot to mention too is safety Reed Blankenship. So Nakobe Dean not there, Reed Blankenship not there. You're looking at the linebackers who are run defenders. They were signed to be run defenders. They are not coverage players. He might have his yards after the catch might beat that prop, not just his yards receiving.
Yeah. I was going to mention Blankenship. I'm mixing segments here. I can't believe I forgot. I would love a Hawkinson, Madison under. Hawkinson over, Madison under, and maybe sprinkle like the Vikings covering or winning, basically just saying like they're going to pass a lot. They know the weaknesses they have on their interior going up against the Eagles interior. I don't expect the Vikings to run very much at all. I think it could be an extreme volume passing game, and that's exactly how you get a Hawkinson 100-yard game, which is like he gets 10 targets because the Vikings throw 40 times and run 15. That's the sort of way, and like especially if he breaks off big runs, we've seen him do that in the past. I think he got to like 180 last year when he like strung together 2 really long catches. That's an SGP I will certainly be playing. And I definitely love those goals.
100+ yards is 6 plus 640. I'm not sure that is the lock we go with, but we are counting units here. So
not a lock, just as we're the discussion that it definitely spurred a thought of an SGP.
Yeah. Okay. That was mine. I think that's my favorite one. So I got the best one out of the way there. Judah, you're up next.
Yeah, I was about to give one that I saw right before we recorded this podcast, which I thought was egregiously mispriced, which was Trevor Lawrence 250 passing yards at minus 105. That has since moved to minus 160. So I feel like I gotta pivot now. Though that was a really, really, really bad prop in my view. I'm gonna go hold the nose here, but I actually had the Bears. My numbers had the Bears as a pretty good offense. Top 10, believe it or not, actually is a more effective offense than the Green Bay Packers. Conversely, the Bucs were one of the worst. That was one of the most misleading scores. I had them about 10 points. I'm gonna hold the nose. 3 is just too much for a Bears-Bucs game. If anything, I was actually encouraged by the Bears' performance, as crazy as that sounds. I anticipate this run game being one of the best in the NFL. I think they're going to lean on that. We didn't get any of the crazy Fields explosive runs. All it takes is a couple, but it is such a big discrepancy in my numbers, and I think it's really an oversell on both sides because of the result and not about the actual process of how well those teams played fundamentally. You got to hold the nose, and you got to take the 3 with the Bears here.
Love it. Real quick, what did you say the Lawrence prop you liked was before it moved?
250 minus 105.
Yeah. DraftKings is now 255.5 is minus 115 to the over. So it's definitely moving there. So George, you mentioned getting back to basics, doing, what we love to do. And in that vein, I got our first teaser of the conversation here. So you knew it was coming. So the Bills moved off of 9.5 on DraftKings. They're now minus 8.5 hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. And your San Francisco 49ers are now minus 7.5 also on DraftKings. Look, I mean, Buffalo is going up against from maybe top 5 defense in the NFL, the New York Jets, to, still, look, they played pretty well in week 1, but it's Russell Wilson and a bunch of injured wide receivers, and Greg Dulcich got hurt in that game as well, a bad offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to bounce back there. They'll cover a field goal. And then, look, the Rams were the surprise of week 1. I'm no longer going to be disrespectful to the Los Angeles Rams, but the Seattle Seahawks pass rush and the Niners pass rush are in 2 different stratospheres. And I think they're just going to be all over Matthew Stafford, be ready to play for this game. And also on offense, literally just double Aaron Donald and then just run the ball for 8 yards a clip, no matter where else you run the ball. I think it's going to be pretty ugly, frankly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the difference between the Seahawks pass rush and the Niners pass rush is like, it's like Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers. Like it's a different game. You're watching a totally different game. I think it's a very, very good point. Okay. My next one is, it's continuing a theme. And this is something that we're going to try and do in our circa millions. We went 3-2. I felt like we got kind of shafted there. The Tennessee Titans should have lost by 20 in that game. It's kind of ridiculous. But nonetheless, the Cleveland Browns. Now, we did not take the Cleveland Browns in our circa millions. I did take them in my other entry, and obviously was very happy about it. But let's take a look here at the matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think everyone is saying, look, the Browns got a win. They were an underdog. They, maybe feel like they should have they got a little lucky there, whatever it might be. And the Steelers don't want to go down 0-2. Now, certainly the Steelers are going to come out and they're going to play their butts off. But I'm not sure that's going to help. And here's why. Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith are ridiculous. I mean, they're amazing. And they destroyed the decrepit Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. Look at this offensive line. You're telling me that this offensive line is going to do better? Kenny Pickett looked completely lost in that game. They lost Deontay Johnson, right? You don't see Deontay Johnson on here. So it's going to be George Pickens getting contested throws all game long. I get that this is in Pittsburgh. I get that it's on Monday night. All of those things, I'm sure, are some kind of trend here or there or somewhere else. And I just think at the end of the day, like, this Pittsburgh offense is not very good. And the Cleveland Browns are a pretty solid team, especially defensively. I think offensively, the big worry, of course, is going to be TJ Watt over here on the right side. But I think they're able to just do exactly what the 49ers did. The 49ers pass blocking, people think that they just dominated from an offensive line perspective. They did not. The 49ers had, I think, a bottom 6 PFF pass block grade and still dominated that game. So I love the Browns, as PFF Greenline does here. By the way, go get yourself a PFF Plus subscription, $20 off with promo code DOMINATE, and get yourself access to PFF Greenline. Cleveland -2.5 in Pittsburgh on Monday night. What do you guys think about that one, by the way? Are you
I love it.
Worried about TJ Watt? Do you like our Browns?
I love the Browns defense, and I think this is a huge mismatch with the Pittsburgh offense, especially without Deontay Johnson. I just don't know who's going to get open, especially against this pass rush. I can't buy Watson right now. I need to see one good game, but 2.5 is such a low. It's such a low spread that I'm fine taking the 2.5 there. And of the things I'm most certain of, up there has got to be that the Browns defense is going to stifle this Pittsburgh offense.
All right, Judy, you're up next.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Vegas. 9.5 is not a real spread to me. I'll go plus 7.5 at 108. I might as well stay on the right side of 7, and I don't think that the difference between 7, 8, and 9 is so huge. And I think this gets to everything we've talked about. The Raiders. I love being able to kind of source where I disagree with the market. Right now, I think it's still pricing in the Bills' defense of the first half of 2022. The Raiders are at 17.5 point total. Maybe I should make that my lock of the week, actually. Just Raiders over 17.5. But I like the defensive side also. It's just this Vegas team was a top 10 offense by my numbers last year. As I've said, I think like 4 or 5 times now, this is just as good of an offense, if not better. They've got Devontae Adams, they've got Jacoby Myers, they've got Hunter Renfrow. The Bills defense is not particularly good. 17.5 is way too low. And the Bills offense is not the 28-point team that we've seen in the past. How many games are we going to need of Josh Allen struggling, making bonehead decisions? They still lack secondary weapons. The Vegas defense isn't great, but I don't think that really matters if Allen's not playing to the MVP caliber quarterback that he is. And quite frankly, I'm starting to think that losing Brian Dable, which is something that happened a long time ago, is actually more meaningful than we think. And we're okay, the meaningful sample was the past couple of years, but I'm starting to believe that Josh Allen might not be that good. I should rephrase. He might not be elite. He might just be good. And that's an egregious mispricing on both sides, if that's true.
No, that's fair.
I definitely like the angle of fading the Bills defense. Sorry to cut you off, George. That I'm all aboard on. I just don't think they're as good a unit as people seem to think they are.
I think that makes a lot of sense. The one question I had there was on Jacoby Myers. Is he going to play? He took an awful hit in that game. Is he going to play?
I doubt it. Yeah, that was a nasty concussion. I'd be surprised if he plays.
Yeah, that was honestly really scary. All right, Brad, you're up.
So I'm out of picks here. One thing I'm keeping an eye on though is potentially an alternate over touchdown passes for Justin Herbert. The over 1.5, the only line out there is -155 or -160, depending on where you're looking. I would guess, Judah, correct me if I'm wrong here, an over 2.5 might be like +125 range, +120 range. Higher? Oh, higher. There you go.
I'm going to pull it up.
Beautiful. So look at that. Even better value than I thought. So while Judah looks that up, I've talked about Tennessee before. 155. Beautiful. I love this play. 255 for over 2.5 touchdowns. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know why I thought it was so low. Okay, then I love it. Where are you seeing that?
I'm seeing this on Caesars.
Beautiful. Okay. So, So I talked about in an article that I put out for some props for week 1, we had Chris Olave over 24.5 for his longest reception. It was 45. It was an easy W there. I think he had 3 catches or 2 catches and 1 that was close. The Titans secondary is awful. And then we saw with the Chargers last week, Rashawn Slater gave up a goose egg of pressures to Bradley Chubb. He looks like Rashawn Slater again. Trey Pipkins looks good. A lot of their guys are looking. It's looking like a pretty good offensive line in front of Justin Herbert for the first time in a while. So, yeah, I just think it's simply too low. He's going to have time. He's going to be attacking bad cornerbacks. I think he's going to go nuclear.
I do like that. I have one more. You thought that we were going to get through an entire podcast and not talk about Patrick Mahomes. Here's my big takeaway from week 1. Patrick Mahomes is underrated. He's better than anyone has imagined. He is better than anyone thought he was. The performance that he put on with the group of players that he was with was, I thought, absolutely tremendous. And I don't have this queued up. I don't have this this graph queued up. It's one of my favorites. Judah, you tweeted it out. It shows Patrick Mahomes' sack rate on true scrambles. I think it's true 0 or whatever it is. He does not take sacks even when he is under pressure and scrambling. It is absolutely amazing. He was so in control of that game against the Detroit Lions, despite the fact that literally his team was like crapping itself all around him. This is a huge game. Over 2.5 touchdowns. He had 2 in the first half against the Lions with that group of receivers. Brad, you tell me if Travis Swift Kelce is going to be out once again. But after you make the news for supposedly undercover dating Taylor Swift, you better get out on the field. Okay, you're retiring or playing football. Like, those are your options. You don't play this week, you got to retire. He's going to want to silence the critics there. I have a vision of Travis Kelce getting into the end zone and doing that awful Taylor Swift dance that she did that went viral because it's like the worst thing that you've ever seen. So I'm really looking forward to that. Over 2.5, it's still plus money. Go get it now. Plus 125. I'm seeing. I'm not going to be fazed by the fact that Kadarius Toney dropped his way to an under last week.
There is a blank space in the Jaguars defense, and that is over the middle, with Rayshawn Jenkins earning like a 35 grade in week 1 and Trey Herndon in the slot corner, not a great player. Yes, that was the worst Taylor Swift joke of all time, but I ripped it.
So I actually didn't even mention that. I was so caught up in the Taylor Swift stuff. So the linebackers for the Jacksonville Jaguars both ranked in the bottom 5 in covering tight ends last year, Aluakon and Devin Lloyd. They were awful. We capitalized on this in the playoffs last year. We bet Travis Kelce's over. It was a lock. He had, I think, 13 receptions in that game. So this is like not something that they've figured out, right? It's not the case. And they're going from playing Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts to playing Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. This is something that I should go actually study, which is the impact of going from playing like no football against anyone to playing a really bad team to then playing a good team and vice versa. Like, I think we're going to learn about that with, potentially the Rams going from the Seahawks to playing the 49ers and potentially the Raiders maybe as well, though I think to Judah's point, they're a little more real. And the Colts, certainly not a good team. It'll be a rude awakening for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, okay. I don't think we should necessarily go with a 6-pack, but I do like where we're at. I want us to trust the process. Start with you, Brad. What are your favorites of the group?
I think we roll back with the alt. It didn't work for us last week, even though the Raiders did win the game, so that was a frustrating one. But I think we're consensus on Miami this week, and I like getting that juice up to plus 150 on the minus 5.5. I like that bet.
Okay. Judah, where's your head at?
Yeah, I gotta go with Brad's Herbert 3 touchdowns, 255. I just bet it myself. Went on to Caesars, and I will also say I've been monitoring the chat. I want to thank. We got Daniel and Andrew both telling us that Trevor Lawrence props at Bet365 is 245, and then at FanDuel is 247. So I just want to throw that out there as back in play for contention of lock of the week. Well, though I will say, as I personally bet 3 seconds ago, I'm going with the Herbert. I love it.
I realized I reminded myself that I can show commentary from the chat. This is going to be huge for Sunday night. Now I'm excited, but I'm starting to remember what StreamYard can do. Get people involved here. It's one of my favorite things to do. You guys are both nice. You gave each other's bets out. I just absolutely love TJ Hawkinson. I mean, I love it. They can't run the ball. They have to throw the ball. I think Justin Jefferson should eat here, but you have to stop Justin Jefferson. So I like Hawkinson. I think we should give something out that's makes sense. So I will personally be betting some kind of ladder, some kind of SGP here. What do you guys think makes sense to give out if we're considering it as a lock of the week? Whatever the closest to even money is for him, because I think his actual
one step
total
up.
is,
What about one step up on the alt? What was the 60 instead of the 50?
Let me go find for you here. I think over 60 was plus 140. I'll find it.
It was
for
140.
You here. Plus 140. So over 60 yards for TJ Hawkinson.
I love it.
Me too.
Any others that you think we should consider or throw out here?
Only last one is the teaser that I really, really like.
And that was, remind me of what that was again.
Bills down to 2.5, Niners down to 1.5. I know Judah had some Raiders love, so maybe not there, but yeah.
I'm definitely concerned about the Bills.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We don't need to go 6. Like you said, 6-pack was aggressive.
Yeah.
What do we have? 4 bets now or 3? We got Herbert, Dolphins.
I think we can narrow to maybe one alt and one of these more even money type. I'll include Hawkinson as an even money type play because I think that's probably where the prop should be.
Agreed.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we trying to zone in on 2? Then is that the idea?
Yeah. What do you guys think of the Hawk Herbert combo?
And Herbert,
I love it. We're just not going to bet on any games. We're just prop guys. I'm down with it.
Alt prop guys, come on. What's better than that?
Just all prop guys and an alt spread potentially. Only other one I can think of. What else? We had Packers was mentioned. What else do we even bring up?
I do really like the Packers. I honestly liked all of the ones. I like the Browns. Packers is interesting. So Packers right now are -1, I think, -1.5.
Yeah, -1 on DraftKings.
Yeah, low total. Thought Jordan Love looked okay. To be honest with you,
pretty good. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
We're not ahead from last week. Trust the process.
I'm feeling kind of being aggressive once again. I don't know.
Yeah, me too. If I'm being honest,
that's
Judah
just-
doesn't like it, but I love
I
it.
know I can't. I obviously got to be on board with someone being aggressive. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the MO here.
Yeah. How do
That's
you
why we're
bounce
here.
back from a 6-pack with a 6-pack, right?
Heaven help us. This is how it all ends. This is how it
Yeah.
ends. What are the odds that we're getting this over 3 touchdown Herbert thing at?
255.
Is over 2.5 or over 3?
2.5, 3 plus is
Yeah,
255.
yeah. I was just confused at over 3. Yeah. I mean, I love that. I said, was it 215, 225? Yeah.
They were efficient last week. Okay, so let's go Hawkinson, 60 plus. Herbert, 3 plus. The alt spread was, remind me of that one again.
Miami minus 5.5 plus 150.
Miami minus 1.5 plus 150. We've got a Bears, sorry, not Bears, a Niners and Bills teaser. That's the one you brought up, right?
It is. Judah doesn't love it, and if Judah doesn't love it, then I don't
Yeah.
love it. But that is the teaser that was mentioned.
The teaser did not do well last week for us, so maybe we need to have something that's a little more that we feel a little more confident in.
Yeah, let's get back to basics. Just bet on one. Yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah,
Just bet on
what's
one.
more basic than alt props?
Exactly.
That's true.
Easy
Exactly.
against props.
Totally true. So yeah, we're just doing props. Is that what we're doing? You guys don't
No.
like
So
any
we
of
got
this?
Hawkinson, Herbert, Dolphins, and what else? Is that
Oh
it?
yeah, the Dolphins all.
Yeah, Dolphins all.
Should we put Mahomes in there?
Yeah, what was it? 2.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
You gotta love Mahomes. Let's go 4-pack.
4-pack.
We're learning. We're
Step
Tall
learning.
boys.
down
They're tall boys, right? That's
enough to recover.
yeah.
Wow, that was incredible. Daniel really loves Green Bay -1.
I'm with you, Daniel.
Daniel, what do you think about that one, Judah? What's your?
I like it.
word?
I mean, like, I prefer the live play here, but I think that like the Falcons are like 75% of Green Bay, right? Like Green Bay's got a better run game, better passing game, but they're the same style of team of just like slow. We're gonna try and win in the trenches, and their defense is better too. I'm with you. I like Green Bay -1.
For Daniel, because Daniel was a champion and hung out with us live, we'll put Green Bay -1 in there. The official printing press play from the group. So we've learned our lesson. Instead of 6, we're going with 5. This is great. It's week 2. Super excited. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. And of course, the Rashid Shaheed alt overs. We can't forget those.
You got the name right.
Yeah, I know. I don't mess up multiple times. You know, it's I learn from my mistakes. I'm sure I did manage to forget like an ad read here somewhere, but you guys managed to get through an hour and 13 minutes, so I'm not going to bore you with that anymore. Appreciate you all. We'll be back on Sunday night live after Sunday Night Football to go over the week 3 lines and talk about week 2. It'll be a lot of fun. See y'all.